Welcome back to the Idlewild Dress Crochet Along. I'm Jess from Make and DOCREW, and I'm so glad you're joining us in this Choose Your Own Adventure dressmaking party. Today in stage 2, we're going to learn how to crochet the back section of the bodice, which should be a piece of cake because it uses all the same skills as the front did last week. And if you worked from the free pattern last week, it's definitely not too late to benefit from the extra stitch charts, measurements, and photo tutorials included in the PDF. If you find yourself needing any additional help, or you just want to show off your stitches, I would love it if you joined us in the Make and DOCREW Facebook group, which I've linked below. And speaking of showing off your stitches, I definitely want to watch your dress come together, so make sure to tag me at Make and DOCREW and use the hashtag IdlewildDress on Instagram so we can all see what you're up to. Okay, let's get into the tutorial. So if you remember from last week with the bodice front, we worked back and forth in even rows until we got to the armhole inset. Then we eliminated a couple stitches on either side and then worked up a bit more till we got to the neckline and then decreased on either side to form the neckline. Now today in the bodice back, we're gonna do the exact same thing. It's all the same skills. So if you're feeling like you're forgetting any part of it, you can go back and watch last week's video because I cover it a lot more in depth. But right now I'm just gonna talk about the things to consider as you're working your bodice back. So first of all, if you made any modifications to the bodice length in your front, you're going to want to do the exact same thing in the bodice back, right? Because you're going to want the front and the back to meet at the same place at the side seam. So if you worked extra rows or eliminated rows maybe, you're going to do the exact same thing on the back piece before you get to the armhole inset. Okay, so once you do that, instead of working a shorter neckline like we did on the front, you're just going to have additional rows, and this is all outlined in the written pattern, before you get to the shaping for the neck. So here's the armhole inset, and there's just, in this smaller child size, a few more rows before you create some slight shaping and meet at the shoulders. On the adult sizes, it's a little bit more shaping. And so the way that this is going to work is instead of working farther in and then decreasing for longer, you're just going to work not quite as far and then decrease for a couple rows and then be done. So the number of stitches that you end up with at the top of the backs should be, or at the back, should be the same number that you had at the top of the bodice front. That's just an easy way to check your work. So go ahead and reference the written pattern for the stitch and row counts for your bodice back. And if you have any questions or need a refresher on the technical skills, feel free to go back and watch last week's video, because while the sort of specifics are different, the skills are exactly the same. And then we're going to meet back here and talk about joining our front and back pieces together. So now that we've completed the front and the back, we're ready to seam our pieces together, and we're going to start at these top straps here, seaming these to the back. So if you look here, this is the front side of the fabric, the right side. And the way you can tell is it's got a little bit more texture here. You can see the row of single crochet and double crochet bumps. It's kind of popping out. And then the wrong side looks like this. So it's a little flatter and it looks more like double crochets. So we want the two right sides together. So this is going to be on the inside, and then I'm going to take the right side of the back piece and I'm going to place it right on top here. And then we're going to pin this together so we can line it up for seaming. And one thing to note is that there should be the same number of stitches on the front strap as the back strap. So if that is off, maybe go back and check out the pattern and see where a mistake was maybe made in the decreasing, because these stitches should line up as we seam them. So if you left a long tail at the end of both the front and the back when you fastened off, you can use either of those to do the seaming. So I'm just going to start and work from the neck out to the shoulder on this one here, and we're going to seam this with a slip stitch. So I am going to insert my hook in the first stitch that doesn't have any yarn connected, and yarn over and pull through like that, so I've got the yarn connected. And then I'm going to work into the next stitch under this V and under the next V. So I'm going through both layers now. I'm going to yarn over and pull a loop up and then just pull through. So that's a slip stitch now. And that's just going to be a little bit sturdier seam for the shoulder. So I'm going to put my hook under the first one closest to me, the first stitch, and then through the back one, yarn over, pull a loop up, and then just pull it through. So this is important not to let your loops get super tight because there's a chance this whole seam could get a little tight and bunched up. But as long as you're keeping them just kind of like you would normally crochet, you'll be good. So I'm just going to go across like this, and when I get to the end of the row, all the stitches should have lined up, and I can fasten off by just pulling my yarn through the last loop on my hook, and then later we'll weave in both ends here at the corner. And then you can go ahead and repeat that same process on the second shoulder. And once we've got both shoulders seamed, we can go ahead and pin both sides. And again, we still have the right side facing in. And then if you have a tail left over from when you maybe began your chain, you can use that to seam. And if not, just use one strand of yarn with your tapestry needle. So we're going to use kind of a version of the mattress stitch here. And to do that, we're going to work across, up, across, up, across, up, across, up. So what that looks like is I'm going to go across here, then I'm going to go up a little bit, go from the top down, and then from the bottom up on the other side. And then I'm going to go from the top down and across and the bottom up on the opposite side. Again, over here, you're going to be hitting some chains at the end of your rows. And so I like to sort of split those in the middle, and if that's creating too big of a gap, you could pick up a little bit of the next stitch over. So then I go up and over. And one thing to pay attention to as you do this is to make sure that your rows are super lined up as you go. So you can see here that this kind of just looks like a continuation, and that's going to help make the seam the most invisible it can be. So we're just going to continue like that in the mattress stitch up to the armhole right up here, and then you can just go ahead and weave in the end because you already have your tapestry needle on, and then repeat the same thing on the second side. So that officially marks the halfway point of this crochet along, and we're well on our way to having our own Idlewild dresses. Next week we're going to learn how to crochet the skirt section of the dress, which is another great place to customize the pattern to the length that suits you. Thanks so much for joining us in the Idlewild crochet along. Until next week, happy crocheting!